Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys today?
Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday. And great show for you today. We're joined by Tiffany Huntsman. And the topic today is we're going to be talking kind of about two things, really, two themes. The journey from being a newbie genealogist to an intermediate genealogist, and kind of how you juggle researching multi ethnic family trees, because that's a whole lot of fun. That has a whole bunch of challenges all on its own.
Yes, yes.
So, hello, Tiffany. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, yes. I'm so excited because Tiffany is also somehow down the line connected to us. And no, we haven't figured it out yet. But, as our goal, Brian and our goal is to definitely highlight genealogists, other genealogists at certain times and trying to figure out where they are and where their problems are coming in at and what they can share with us that they've learned and that they've known, from doing their research. This way, we can always cover all of the ethnic groups, no matter who it is that we're, talking to, because unfortunately, it's not covered. The minorities are not necessarily covered in genealogy. And our goal is to make sure minorities of every ethnic group is covered, not just European, research.
So that's true. Tiffany and I are different than Donegan because Donegan and I, we know how we're related at least 8 or 9 different ways.
Too many.
Where with Tiffany, we kind of have the smoking guns. We share a lot of free people of color in North Carolina and Virginia. We know the family names. We haven't found the people yet.
Yeah.
They're not the easiest people to research.
No. Like you connect to the Goings and we connect to the Goings and we know that all of them are related to each other, but where they are, we don't know. So
We have Artises and Chavises and
yes.
Coxcocks and Heathcocks, and oh yeah, it's just a barrel of fun.
Linears.
So, Tiffany, I'm going to open up the show by asking you kind of the standard genealogy adventures question about how did you get involved in genealogy and what was it about researching that really kind of sucked you in?
So I guess for me personally, it started with my great grandmother, my maternal great grandmother, my mom's mother's mother. And not really knowing her history. When she was living, she never really spoke about her family. She never really spoke about where she came from or who her relatives were. Um, we knew who she was married to and who she had children by, but we didn't know who her parents were. We didn't know if she had siblings. We didn't know if she had, extended family members, nieces, nephews, other relatives. We never knew those people. And that was my entire life growing up, my mom's entire life for her growing up. Even my grandmother,
Mm. She froze.
She frozen. She will be back. She will be back.
She
Oh,
will be back. Yes. Small technical difficulty, you guys. Give her a sec. There
okay,
she
I'm
is.
back. Sorry, I don't know where we cut off at.
You were talking about your mom. Yeah, how you
Yeah.
never knew, y'all didn't really know too much about her side of the family.
Yes. So just growing up, not knowing very much about my maternal great grandmother um, was really the motivation for me to start researching. I have children, I have small children. I wanted to make sure that I would pass on my knowledge to my children at some point in the future. And then just to have at least know more of the history on that particular lineage. For my great grandmother. So for me, my motivation has really been, let's find out who this woman was and where she came from. And I decided to take a DNA test in 2016, which then led me on this genealogy journey. I did not know it was going to take me to where I'm at now, but I'm enjoying it as I go.
So what were some of the ways that you chipped away to break through that brick wall?
So let's see here. In the beginning, even before I tested, we had the oral history, right? So we have the oral history that most families will, only know of what was talked about in the family. And then once I did the DNA test, of course, in 2016, there's been so many changes and updates across all of the.
I don't know what's going on with her. Tiffany, if you can hear us, we kind of lost you.
Yeah, we lost your audio.
We lost your audio.
Okay.
Oh,
you're back.
Oh, sorry.
So you took the DNA test in 2016.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, took the test in 2016. Decided that I was going to try to make contact with the DNA matches or the DNA relatives that show up on the match list. And it started kind of one by one. Well, at first, I really didn't know what to say to people. Like, just kind of, hi, I believe we are related. It says you're my fourth cousin. I recently had talked with another cousin of mine, and she said, Tiffany, the only way that we're going to be able to find our connection is when we talk to our distant DNA matches. When we talk to them, when we, ask questions, when we sort of analyze what's in front of us a little bit more closely. So for me, yeah, it's been reaching out.
Which I appreciate is not always the easiest thing to do. Like I said, feel free to jump in when your audio comes back. Because again, you're reaching out to complete strangers. You don't, I remember when, and Dawn, you can jump in too. I remember when I was first reaching out to my DNA cousin matches, I wasn't really sure, would anyone respond? Would they be interested? Were we going to be able to, find those missing pieces and share information? So, I can imagine as a new genealogist that is a really big kind of, that's a big psychological barrier to break through.
Yeah, it's also kind of scary too, because for me, when I first started doing my research, well, I wasn't scared. Y'all know me, I'm kind of crazy. But I mean, I sent mine out. I started mine because I think mine was different because I started with a different goal. My goal was to just know the living people. I never even wanted to do those that had passed on. So I wanted to know the living people. So I was getting all of the emails from people and sending out emails to different people. And this was well before the DNA test. So by the time I got to DNA testing, I kind of have an entire spiel, a regular write-up saying, hi, I'm Danya. I've been researching for so many years. This is the information that it seems to be showing that we're connecting. This is a possibility. How? Get back to me when you get the opportunity. Now it's just like, that's just I literally have a copy and paste that I use and I put it in because at this point I just put it in. I don't have anything else to say. And if you want to respond, you can respond. And if you don't want to respond, that's fine too. Because I've come to the realization that if you don't help me, I'll find it still. It's not gonna happen.
I feel the same way at this point in time. I think even when I first started, like it was definitely a little overwhelming in the beginning to see all these people that you don't know, and then to try to figure out, well, where do they fit? So I wanted to kind of also reiterate too that my father is white, my mother is African American. So for me, I already knew for the most part who was going to be on my mom's side versus who was going to be on my dad's side. But now it was like me looking at my mother and saying, well, who's going to be on her father's side? Who's going to be on her mother's side? And narrowing that down. And so in the very beginning, it was overwhelming because I was not sure who was who. Because when I first took that, like I said, when I first took that test, I had a lot of distant cousins. There weren't really a lot of people who were more closely related on that side. And it didn't really come into play until I got my mother tested. So once I got her tested, then I was really able to see more closely which side was which.
So when we were talking during the show prep, you were saying that you've been researching for about 4 or 5 years now.
Yep.
And you're saying that you probably are more of a dedicated researcher over the last couple of years. So kind of knowing what you know now about reaching out to DNA cousins, because I imagine with our audience that's still a perplexing and challenging thing to do. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back 4 or 5 years from now?
I would say to definitely have an idea of the historical timelines. And also maybe if you have a tree, that you would make your tree available and public. Even if it was just to your grandparents. What I've noticed a lot over the last 4 years or 5 years is that people will have a tree, but it's all private. And then they send you a message because they want to know how they're related to you. But I can't see your tree, and you know, I don't know where we would start. I've got like a million names here, so help me out. I need to see something. Give me a name, you know, or at least a location.
Right.
Where, you know, those are the two most important things, like location and maybe a surname. A time frame would help. So those are like the first things I've noticed.
Well, when we get Tiffany back, I was going to say that if I could go back almost 20 years now, but go back and tell my kind of junior genealogy self, especially contacting DNA matches, it took me a while to strike the right balance between sending someone a fact-rich message, but not make it War and Peace. And by that I mean, if I believe that, you know, we were related through the Joe Blogs line of Warren County, North Carolina, give the full, the full name. I would give the full name, the year that they were born, the year that they died, if known, who they married, name of their parents, and just a brief line, you know, this is my line. I think somehow it connects with your line, and let's carry that conversation forward. Because I'm going to admit, one of the I keep getting them quite often, and it frustrates me. I get messages, "Oh, hi, I think we're related." Well, I have nearly 200,000 people in my tree, so
I swear.
I remember the first time I reached out to you. And I said, "Hi, Brian," because I think I saw one of your shows previously, and I was like, "I think we're related," and you're like, "I have no idea. Go look at my tree." And it was the same thing. It was just like, okay, I need to know more information. But that, I think, was 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues. Like when we are all doing this, and you let me know, Tiffany, if you have this problem. Well, actually, you just did. They have to come with the right amount of information if you want to know, especially for people who have been researching for a while. So between Brian and I, we're like 50, 60 years combined. And so for us, please don't contact me and say, yeah, Joe Blow is on your tree and he's related to me. More than likely, I have at least 7 to 10 Joe Blows. Right. So, yes. And then their ages range from everywhere. So, because my tree, although it is not as massive as Brian's, my tree is very meticulous. So if you're coming to my tree, I'm already at a point where I know where everybody is, but I still need dates. I need death dates. I need birth dates. You can't just say, yeah, we're related to each other and not think that I'm not going to say to you, okay. Because there's absolutely nothing else that I can say, but okay.
Well, it would be like someone contacting you, Johnny, is saying, oh, Johnny Peterson is my ancestor. Which Johnny Peterson? First of all, are you talking about Johnny Peterson from Edgefield, from Greenwood, from McCormick?
Yes.
The names repeat often.
Yes.
I was just talking with another relative of mine, and we literally have about 5 John Stanleys.
See?
And then it's like, why did they keep naming their kids the same names over and over for each generation? But, you have to know their dates in order to know which one you're talking about. Because that one over there married this lady. This one over here married a different lady.
Well, we have, so Bernice, who's, I think all of our cousins, Bernice Bennett, she put up there, she says, sometimes people just don't know. And that's true. Sometimes they don't, but you still got to come back with something. I don't know. I don't know what the best way for you to do it. Like, I think everybody has either a birth date or a death date or a possible or a roundabout. But if you don't have that information, unfortunately, you got to give me something. You know where they live, where they used to live. It's got to be something that made you come to my tree.
Yeah.
So whatever that is that made you come to my tree, I need that information, not just their name. And that's the thing that I'm saying. I get exactly what Bernice is saying when she says that, but you were pulled to my tree for a reason.
Yeah. Or I guess the way that I came to think of it when I was still in the early part of my journey is I realized how time intensive it was to do research. And obviously, as a new researcher, it was taking me to probably 10 times longer than what it takes me today. But being mindful that when I sent someone a message, I was kind of inviting them to stop whatever it was that they were doing. I mean, they, especially once you start researching regularly and spending 5, 10, 20 hours a week doing research, when you're sending someone a message, you're kind of asking them, well, can you just stop what you're doing for a couple of minutes and help me out? So like I said, I just started to learn the more information I could give, but just keep it really short, keep it really simple, not turning it into War and Peace, the better the response I got in return. So that's my experience. I don't know if the two of you have experienced something similar.
Yeah, definitely keep it short and sweet with a name, a date, location.
Mm-hmm. So Bernice said that you just found out. Bernice said you just found a Bermuda cousin. How did you go about that? That's interesting.
So by the grace of God. Honestly, our Bermudian cousin that Bernice and I share, she is an immediate family member to me that, again, goes back to my second great grandmother. The Bermudian side is through my mom's maternal side of the family. For the longest, we did not have any other close DNA matches other than my immediate family. And then one day we had a third cousin match, and she wrote me back. She lives in England. She says she's from Bermuda. And then about a year later, she had her mother test, and then boom, her mom pops up there, second cousin. So I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm so glad.
Wow.
But yeah, that's been a journey too, because now we're faced with researching outside of the country. And it takes us into other areas, not just Bermuda, because now we are focused on looking at British records and Portuguese records. So that's where we're at now. That's where I'm at now in my research.
Okay.
So was there any indication that the person that linked you to Bermuda was in the within the United States, or did they go somewhere else?
Nope. They have always been in Bermuda. That line goes all the way back into the 1810s in Bermuda. And previous to that, we found one branch that goes into Portugal and one branch.
So we had a couple of people who have started asking you questions already. So you are a hot topic. And basically, what we have, I have some people who were responding to the tree situation when you were talking about your tree and how you have your tree public. So I'm gonna put these questions together and then you kind of go through it. One of them was, why do you think people put their tree private? Because you said yours was public. Then you had some answers with it, and then another person. Well, I'm not gonna put these questions together. I'm gonna go from that one. So why do you think people make their tree private?
I think they make their tree private if there are living people on their tree, which is fine. But what I've also come across is that they'll put their
Time out. Say it again, because you just broke up. You said they'll put something and then it went away.
I'm here.
Okay. You said they'll put some, you said living people were fine, but you said then other times they would put, and then
they'll put their grandparents and maybe even their great grandparents as private, which is not helpful.
Yeah.
Because you have to start with, I would say, to start with your great grandparents if you know all of them by name.
Yeah.
And that's for me, that's what I found to be most useful is if you have those great grandparents by name.
Right. Well, can Shasha Williams, she said she has her tree private, but the reason is that I'm new to all of this and I don't want to put false information out there. I notice some people who automatically run with what they see, regardless if it's right. Then they get mad because of not doing their own due diligence. So can we all just applaud?
Yeah.
Because I get it. And I agree with what she's saying because Brian was just sitting here. We were just talking before the show, and he was talking about a lady who was born 1779, had all these kids, but guess what her death date was? 1779.
That was a neat trick if you could do it.
I mean, that's crazy. That's amazing. How in the world can somebody be born and died the same year but have a whole bunch of children? It's absolutely crazy. So yeah. But go ahead, Brian. You were getting ready to say something, and then I have another question for Tiffany.
No, well, the person who made the comment provided one of them. The other reason that I see a lot of in the Facebook genealogy groups are people get really upset when people take things from their trees and either attribute photographs or documents to the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
They don't acknowledge where they got that information from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just genealogical courtesy and best practice. If you do take content from someone's tree, always acknowledge where you got it from.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I can see where people would get upset about that.
To your point about that, what I've also come across is that I think some people don't really realize that a lot of what's on Ancestry, they have a huge database. So if you're paying for their membership to have access to those records in their database, and you find that information through their database, I don't like to attach from someone's tree to my tree. I always like to go back to the actual document and then make sure that what I have is my actual person that I'm searching that's on that document. Yeah, as far as taking things from people's trees, that's something that, because like you just said, you don't know if that's going to be the same person. And you don't know especially if you don't have any other documentation, you're just grabbing those dates from their tree. It might not even be the same person, but I like to make sure that I go and I check the document. So as a new researcher, I did have to invest in the Ancestry database to find records, actual records, census records, birth, death. And we were saying earlier, even some other types of documentation, wills, land deeds, probate records, that sort of thing too.
Right. Yeah.
And
Go
like,
ahead,
I'll make this really quick. But to Dania, think about all of those North Carolina documents for Moses Williams, all of those deeds that Ancestry didn't have, that all of us found, digitized, and uploaded.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
people were putting them on their trees and not crediting the Genealogy Adventures team for actually being the ones to provide that.
Oh yeah, we had that happen a lot.
yeah.
And the good thing about it though is that they tend, because the families that find that information are all connected to us. So when they are talking about it and they're making all these comments and they're saying, "Oh yeah, well I did this," you're reading off what we wrote, so I can catch you. But in the same instance, I'm not trying to down you in any kind of way. I'm just trying to clarify, because that's what it's for. It's for clarification. It's for clarity. And that's what that information is up there for. However, please don't say that you did it, because you wouldn't have it if we didn't do it. Because there was absolutely, let me be clear, there was no information on Moses. Everything that anybody finds right now on Moses Williams, that is because of Brian, Loretta, myself, Hamad, Sheila Hightower, God rest her soul. We did that initial work. And now with the new 11 children, that was Brian and Loretta. See, if I can do that, even though I'm a part of the Genealogy Adventures team, I'm not going to take credit for their stuff. I wasn't researching at that time. I wasn't on it.
Right.
So it's not for me to say, yeah, I found it, even though I'm a part of that team. And that's the part that it, like Brian said, it's literally a common courtesy to be able to come up and say, oh yeah, I found this. Patrick Quarles, who is one of our family members, and another cousin, I can't think of what her name is on Ancestry. They make it a point that if they get something on their on one of somebody else's tree, they'll say submitted by, and they'll tell who it's from. That's common courtesy. That it is, that's just what it is. It's common courtesy. And for whatever reason, some people just don't have it. I don't know why, but they don't. But there's another question for you, Tiffany, and this is from Steven Zunick, and he says, you started with a goal of finding more about your mother's heritage. How have your goals expanded since your journey began? That's a great question.
How have my goals expanded?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, at this point in my research, I've been digging into something that's a little bit more advanced from what I've been used to, which is, again, is like researching my mother's side of the family outside of the country, which has really been interesting. But it's faced with challenges too. So me finding records, finding records out of the country has been a challenge, especially for African descent out of the country. So if I'm looking in the islands, it's been challenging and tricky to find those records in the islands. It's also been challenging and tricky to find records that are, for example, in Portuguese. I do not speak Portuguese, so having a translator. So, expanding, I do want to continue working on my tree in this manner, and also just expanding it. Eventually, I would like to travel to some of the places where my folks came from. So that's on my plate, but that's later down the line.
Okay. Brian?
Okay. So I was going to invite you to just give a little synopsis about the different ethnic groups that are in your family tree. Because the question I'd like to ask you is, like me, multi-ethnic, you get tempted to just do a scattergun thing because you just want to just research everything all at once, which is a really good and easy way to get yourself confused and kind of lost. So what kind of process did you go through to identify, did you decide to concentrate on one ethnic group more than any other, or kind of how did you strategize that?
So in the beginning, I really focused on my father's side of the family in the very beginning for my tree when it came down to my tree, because we knew a lot of information about his tree or his side of the family. So I was able to focus my initial research on that. And then once I had his tree set up, I said, okay, well, this is my tree. So this is going to be about where I come in on this tree in this mixed family. So now I have my mother's side. So in the very beginning, what I did was like you said, put everybody together. That causes problems when it comes to being having mixed heritage, but also just being mixed and having to put that out for people and make that public. And for the first 3 years, that's what I did. Now, in retrospect, I would not have done it that way. So what I've been doing over the last year and a half is I have these micro trees. So I'll make a micro tree. I have one for my mother's father's side, one for my mother's side. So now I can look, so when people say, oh, I think we're related over here, and I already know what side they're on. So I'll be like, okay, here's access to my mom's paternal side, or, oh, okay, you're on my mom's maternal side. Here's access to her tree on that side. And then I have that I only have that for my mother's side. For my father's side, it's a little bit easier and it's a little bit less complicated. So I just only have his mother and father all together.
So your father is European, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why that's easy. Well, that actually leads to a great question that Monica said. Monica said, Tiffany, you have been great with finding names of families, surnames to look for. How and what is your strategy? She said, and you doing that because we found so many connections that way. So this is Monica Mercy Gal.
Okay, so
yeah, that's LaMonica Brewington.
Yes. Okay. So LaMonica is my cousin. We met for the first time in 2018 at a reunion, but we did not know exactly how we were connected, but we were related to all these people that came from all over the country, and it was amazing. And as far as my strategy goes, what I've been doing, so I don't know if you guys know this, but I have a background in medical research, which is totally different from genealogy research, but I look for patterns and I look for locations and I look for travel, migration patterns, right? So I look for that first. And one of the things I've been really fascinated by is that I'll read about the history of what was going on in that location. So there was a cousin who had reached out to me and they're like, oh yeah, we were, my folks are from Ohio. I was like, oh yeah, my grandmother, she lived in Ohio, but that was in the 30s. And he was looking for people that were in the 1800s in Ohio. So I'm like, okay, let me find out exactly what was going on in Ohio in the 1800s. So I'll find historical timeframes to go by, read up on the history of it, and then I'll go from there. And as far as looking for those surnames, because it's not always a surname. Sometimes what I've been faced with on two different lines are non-paternal events about, 2 generations, 3 generations, maybe even 5 generations back. And that's been very tricky to comb through. But I'm always looking for patterns. I'm always looking for locations. I've learned a lot over the years from other researchers like Brian and Danya, and also, Bernice and Bernice Bennett, and um, another cousin who is a researcher for 45 years. And she's probably not going to watch this, or maybe she will at a later date because she doesn't know how to do the live streaming thing. But her name is Miss Ruth Spillers. And one of the things I learned from her was that, hey, you have to look at who was living next door, who was living on that same block, who was even living in that same county or parish, or who was living, where did they work? If they worked, where were they working? How far away was it? Because usually you'd find that other surname that you're searching for, that other family member that you're searching for, they might be in the same county, but just on the other side of the bridge, or they might be living at the end of the block. So on that census record, they might be on page 3 and not on page 1.
Right.
You see, that's the great thing about genealogy. Well, it's the great thing and it's the frustrating thing about genealogy. You don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it.
Yeah.
And especially when it's dealing with genealogies that you're not used to. So for me, it was like, I'm taking an online course to learn how to do Jewish genealogy. And I did laugh about the comment about Portuguese, because I don't speak Yiddish. I certainly don't speak Hebrew, and I can read neither one of those. But learning about naming conventions and customs and traditions, and specifically, to the part where my Jewish ancestors live, that's taking me way out of my comfort zone. But it's cool. It's a challenge for me. It's going to be a new skill set, new knowledge that I can hopefully apply to other areas. Same token with Native American ancestry. And again, it's been a journey for me to realize that what we call the genealogical standard of proof and the genealogical standard of practice, but is applicable to European genealogy. So when you're doing things like, you can't apply that to enslaved people because they didn't have records, so you automatically can't use it for them. You can use the questioning process to try to find out what records that can prove what you need to prove. But you know what I mean? It's not the same kind of genealogy. Native American genealogy at some point was oral. They didn't write it down. They had tribal historians who can remember all of those lines. So that's the thing that I love the most about genealogy. There's always something new to learn. There's new skill sets to adapt. And I mean, how have you found that process, Tiffany?
I have. Definitely takes a little bit more attention to detail too, and trying to figure out, again, separate, like what I did for me was I separated the lines based on locations. So clusters of families living together, and looking at that in more detail. Sometimes what I also realized was that there were people, like sometimes the mother, her maiden name would be passed on to her son. He wouldn't take the father's name for whatever reason, case being, and having to go with that. And then you look at that more closely.
So,
go
ahead.
And again, with free people of color, what I'm finding, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than not. You have a household that's headed up by a single female. Now, she clearly didn't have kids on her own. She was clearly having children with someone else, but you never see a male in the household.
Right.
So then what's kind of picking up on what Tiffany was saying, that's where maps come in handy. Because it's not like, the woman was going halfway across town to meet whoever she was having her children with. So it's basically looking at all the properties that were around her properties and then looking at DNA matches to try to figure out who my likely ancestor in that line was.
Right.
But are you finding that a lot with your free people of color, Tiffany, about basically having a family unit headed by a single female?
I've come across that, I will say, on 2 occasions. And one took place in Louisiana, in a certain parish where this is how I found it. I was looking in the census for her, and I found her with all her children listed. And of course, there's no male that was her age in the census with her. It was all like teenage children and younger. And so I said, well, that's interesting. So then I had to look more closely at the top, and it was, it read about the parish that they were in. And so I went to that. I looked up a map for that parish from that time period. And the good thing is Louisiana has excellent records that you can actually do that with maps and such. So I went and I looked up the parish, and then I went back and I said, okay, well, the next closest match is this person. And they're talking about that's their great great grandparent who was in the same parish with my great great grandparent. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I was like, wow, they only lived like 4 houses down from each other. DNA is telling on them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I've come across that twice. Once in for a line out of Louisiana, and the other one for a line that was in Indiana, actually.
So I have a question. One of the things that I say about Edgefield is that it's probably, and I stress this on a regular basis, it's probably one of the best places in the world to have family and research. Why? Because it gives you a little bit of everything, and you get touched with it all on a regular basis. The other thing that I feel like kind of happened with us, and I didn't realize this until after Sheila told me this. And I think even, no, Sheila told me this. And one of the things that I was told was, she was talking to me when I first started, when I was really getting into my research and everything. And as I was doing stuff with her, Gail and Sheila both said this. They were like, well, she was like, well, you got it. You're advanced. And I looked at them like, no, I'm not. I'm a beginner. And they said, no, not when you're researching Edgefield. So my question goes into, do you find yourself a furthermore advanced than other people, even though you've only been doing it for 5 years? Do you find yourself furthermore advanced because you do have connections in places that give you everything? Like, you have your father's side and then you have your mother's side. So because you have those two separate sides like that, it was just real easy for you to go in and just go straight for your father. But your mother's side is a challenge. Mm-hmm. And so do you think that your mom's side gave you a bit of a better edge on things as far as learning it and picking up on it so quickly? Because if it was just like your dad's side, do you think you'd be where you are today?
No.
That's my case. No.
Oh no, we've lost the audio.
She said, no. Try it again. No, we can't hear you. Oh man, it's coming back. It'll show. But I mean,
well, I get your point, because some depending on what your genealogy is or your genetic makeup is, mm-hmm. some genealogies force you to think outside of the box. So we're saying some groups of people are always going to be more poorly documented than other people. And by doing Edgefield and having every kind of genealogical scenario that you could conceive of, and many that you probably couldn't, that were thrown at us, I can now apply all of the strategies that I used to find my enslaved ancestors who were poorly documented for my white ancestors who were in place. They were early pioneers, Kentucky, Tennessee, just trying to, thinking outside of the box to think about where I can find those breadcrumbs to get either the proof I need or the information that I need.
Right. Are you back?
I'm back.
Oh,
okay. Perfect. So what did you say? Then you just said no.
Oh yeah, no. I said just straight up no, because for me, like you said, it was easier because I had, my dad's European heritage. That's just a given that it's easier to find those records documented. And those folks were Mormon. So like there's tons of stuff that's available for my dad's side of the family. But at the same time, I do have 2 lines that go out beyond early colonialism that are more new immigrants on that side too, that have been a challenge for me as well. But I will say for my mother's African-American heritage, and that was a challenge because I didn't know where to start, but also I came to find out that I was related to almost all of the professional genealogists that are out there. There is a connection to almost everybody that you guys have featured on your show, which I thought, what is this? Like, I was like, what's going on here? You know,
it's
like
Edgefield. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say it's Edgefield because somewhere down the line, okay, I won't even say Edgefield. I'll say South Carolina because my personal belief about South Carolina, and nobody has to agree, but my personal belief about South Carolina is that after the Civil War ended and the Reconstruction started, in my opinion, the Reconstruction was very based in South Carolina to a certain degree. Everything that happened, they had to kind of cater to that South, and the South was looking at South Carolina, and guess where in South Carolina they were looking? Edgefield. You had Strom Thurmond. You had all those 10 governors that had some type of hand in all of that stuff. I mean, I just feel like that. That's my feeling. I don't have to. People don't have to agree with me. Sometimes people will learn stuff and look at me and say, Danya, oh, that's incorrect. But then later on come back and say, girl, when did you get that information? But I'm like, it's not. I have this connection with our ancestors, and they really kind of tell me this stuff. I know it sounds crazy, but
no,
y'all
it does not sound crazy because I've had dreams about my ancestors like reaching me and saying, look there. You know, like look there. Go back and look there again. Look, like go to that other, go back there and look again because it's right there. And the urge has been so strong. I was talking to one of my Cape Verdean cousins yesterday, actually, or maybe it was the day before on Friday. And so we were talking about how strong the pull is for you to continue because you'll get this intuitive vibe from your ancestors that, okay, you're on the right path. Keep going, keep going. And sometimes it's frustrating because it's like, I want to throw my hands up and give up and just walk away from it, but I'm so close. So why would I give up? Right. So that's what I feel. I feel that often. And also just the simple fact that from having the different types of connection.
We lost you again. So we're gonna come back to what you said, but in the midst of it, I think there's a question up here for all 3 of us, and it's an excellent question from Dale Cole. And they said, what is the easiest thing about researching genealogy, and what is the hardest thing about researching genealogy? So Brian, I'm not answering. I'll answer it, but I'm just not going to answer it right now. Brian, go ahead, Tiffany. You go.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, Dale. Thanks for asking the question. So I would say the easiest thing to research, of course, would be census records. Sure, let's go look up a census record. The easiest thing too would be like we said in the beginning, if you know the name and location and date, you might be able to pull up their birth record
Internet is not being our friend today.
No, it's not. Go ahead.
Oh, is that me or it's Tiffany?
Can you talk, Tiff? Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Finish your statement.
Yeah, so a birth record or a death certificate, census record, those are very easy things that you can pull. But also just to have, the name and date and location.
Okay, Brian.
I'm going to say the deceptively easy thing, especially if you're using services like Ancestry, is just to click and save without actually opening up the document and really taking a look to make sure that you're saving the right document to the right person. So that's the deceptively simple thing. For me, actually, the most difficult, the most challenging has been endogeny. And that's generation of generation of generation of cousin marriages, because you're going to have naming conventions. You're going to have God only knows how many kids within the same extended family with the same name. And that goes back to my point about records. You really have to open them. You have to look line by line to make sure that you really are saving the right document for Mariah Jones out of a family that probably has 15 Mariah Joneses, all born around the same time.
Right.
I will say too, yes, endogamy is very, like I said, people will also they'll name their children the same name over and over. They'll marry their cousins, or they'll marry their first cousins from back in the day. They married their first cousin or their second cousins, or they married their one family will have two siblings that married the siblings of another family that lived in the same area, and they name their children the exact same names, and that is really tough when you're researching.
Right.
And
also,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say also another challenge would be like the non-paternal events.
That's what I was waiting to say.
Yes, where you think this person is from that family, and it turns out that you're looking for a dead end because they're not from that family. They're from a different family. But finding that's a whole challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, the easiest, like, I do agree with you guys with the easiest things, it's the census records, the death records, all of those things. But that daggone endogamy, I think the thing that got me about that was the fact that I couldn't even grasp a cousin marrying a cousin. So that was the part. Everybody has their part of genealogy that might make them run to the bathroom and throw up because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But that's what that was for me. So I mean, I had to deal with it over and over and over, and they just kept smacking me in my face with it. It was like the family was like, "You gonna get used to this, and when you gonna have to get used to this." So now I'm not gonna say I'm used to it, but I get it. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm okay with it, but I get it. And then you got the non-paternity events. Those are heartening because you have to tell these people that their dad is not their dad, or explain it to them why this may have happened or what. So I think the thing about the non-paternity event is more or less expressing it to someone that you have done the research for and saying, well, that's not really your daddy.
Right. Or even if you found that they had a different surname, right? So what I found with my maternal great grandmother was that she had a different surname from what I was biologically connected to.
Yeah.
So finding that and then having to navigate through that was also a challenge.
And it's always wonderful being related to your own self, like
being your own cousin.
Yes, I'm my own cousin about 10 times.
But the other tricky thing about those cousin marriages is they can complicate your DNA results. So you think you're matching someone in one way. Like, for instance, I'm a double Peterson. Donnie is a double Peterson. Donnie, are you also a double Williams? Are you a double
every freaking thing?
Double.
Let's just be real. I'm my own cousin like 7 different times. It's sickening.
So if you're aware that your family has had, or the family or the community that they lived in had that kind of a tradition of cousin marriages, always be mindful of that when you're working with your DNA, because it's not that you have a false positive, it's just you're getting the same DNA through more than one set of ancestors.
Right.
It's just so much fun.
Well, this show has really gone past so fast. And Tiffany, I think we are definitely going to have you back on the show just to have this kind of conversation. Do you agree with that, Brian?
I absolutely agree.
I would love it. Thank you so much, you guys.
And this was, because there's still some things that we didn't get to touch on with you.
I know, to dive in deeper.
Yeah, you have like a Native American stuff that we can talk about. So you definitely have to get back onto the show because we're like 4 minutes out, and it's about to end. Unfortunately, I love talking with you guys. I swear I do.
I love talking with you guys too because there's always another thing. We start going into another topic, which leads us to another. So,
which is what genealogy is.
Absolutely. But in the last minutes of the show, Tiffany, what advice would you give someone who is brand new to researching? Like a pitfall to avoid.
Oh, okay. I would say to hold out on GEDmatch.
Good one.
Oh no.
Oh, her thing went out. Oh my God. It didn't like you saying that. What I want you to do is type it up. Tell us what it is and send it to that thing because the show is about to end. Brian, do you want to talk about next week's show?
So next week's show is actually, we're going to talk about being a brand new genealogist and all of the kind of trials and tribute. Oh, it's not. Sorry.
Yeah.
You talk about it.
It's Wise.
Oh, yeah.
The 31st.
You introduce it.
Next week, we're going to be talking to Tim Wise. So we're going back into our a race show, another show about where we are in history, right, in the world today with the racism and how can we fight it and what's the best way to move through it and the things that we basically need to do. And Tim Wise is another person like Jane. So y'all need to come ready and come prepared. Okay, I'm just saying, you're gonna have to do it. My best thing, my advice to you is to search them out, look them up on YouTube, look at what we're getting ready to tackle, and that way you guys will know. Because Brian and I, we don't run scared from anything, and a race talk is a scared conversation in America, and we're gonna have it because it connects to our history as a whole, and it allows us to know how to defeat it because it can be defeated. But the reason why, in my opinion, that it's not being defeated is because we do not look at the history of it. And all of us as genealogists, we see the history of it, whether it's Black, white, Native American, I don't care, Hispanic, Latina X, anything like that. We all see the history of racism. We all know what it is. And because we do know those things and we do see those things, it's our turn and our time to share it. And I think bringing in someone like Jane and someone like Tim Wise, they can give us the background as well from what they're learning modern wise while we pick up what's the historical side of it. So yes, be ready, be prepared, get yourselves together, and bring your tea. You may hear little words, just like you might hear like you did with Jane. Just get ready.
Yep. And my 2 cents worth would be, don't be shy. If you have a question for Tim, if you have a comment about something that said, just type it up. We'll read it out, and we will carry on the discussion with it.
Yes.
So Tiffany, I don't know if you're back on audio.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in today. Thank you for dropping your knowledge.
Yes, it was great. So see you guys next week. Enjoy your Sunday. I'm Danya.
Brian.
And you guys have a great, great Sunday and a great holiday. And please stay safe and stop going around everybody passing this germ around. It's a real germ. It's not a game. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.